I fire on the record button. Just let those few seconds of dead air in so I can do some noise equalization at the end of this all. And then immediately a phone goes off. That's a perfect way to start this. Yeah, it's me, it's Pichy. I'm podcasting again. What a terrible idea. Who let me do this? Who said yes to this? Welcome to, I guess, the Pichy and Palscast postpartum, post-wrestling, post-pro wrestling. There's the alliteration. Post-pro wrestling review. So, I've actually wanted to do wrestling-related podcasting for a while. Back when I still was doing those shows with Matt and Louie. I really wanted to show them AEW All In. Oh, well, it wasn't even AEW, just the first All In show as it happened. And that was when Louie decided to bail on me. And then the opportunity never really came up to do some wrestling shows with Matt. So, I have a bunch of other people here. And we just watched AEW Double or Nothing 2020. And I guess we're going to talk about that and some stuff. So I guess we should go around this room, whoever wants to be in this show, and just give whatever name you'd prefer to be referred to for the course of this show, and your history with wrestling.
I'm Michael, relative newcomer to wrestling.
Closer. Always closer, like an ice cream.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about the peas.
Resist the urge to eat the microphone? Preferably?
Maybe.
Yeah. Didn't really watch it much as a kid. Got into it as a teenager when my family got Foxtel, which was apparently very much not the right era to get into WWE programming. Don't watch it too much nowadays outside of AEW shows when Pichy brings them to places and the occasional pay-per-view.
I'm Max. I'm even less familiar with pro wrestling than Michael is. I got into it around 2017, which was something of a downturn in WWE, which proved to be very amusing for me because I enjoyed the train wrecks. My history of pro wrestling has basically just been I found it and then I realized I loved it and just went back and started binging on a whole lot of old pro wrestling material.
I'm Matt. I'm just here for the food.
Cooler, you don't want to be on this? That's cool. Person over there, do you want to? No, that's cool. All right. So we have a couple of people here to be our live studio audience. So I guess next point on the talking about is how the hell are we doing a live studio audience in the COVID era of content production? And that's because South Australia is pretty much done with things. We flattened the curve. We've had no new cases besides one, which was a British immigrant.
To my knowledge, we still have zero known active cases.
So yeah, we're basically done here and can start seeing each other in person bit by bit. And we're able to watch the show together.
Yeah, it's also just the fact that there's only 5 people in this house at the moment. Mm-hmm. So, we're not actually breaking any of the rules here, even if we were still under the stricter restrictions.
Yes. Oh. So, next point I guess we should talk about with this show, what we watched. All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. I kind of had this picture in my mind of going through, since it's my first time doing a show on current day wrestling, to go back and look at, say, some of the material causes that have led us to this show existing. But that would involve a lot of me just monologuing for like 15 minutes. If you ever heard the previous time I talked about wrestling, it went very long. So instead I'll just say, hey, yeah, so All Elite Wrestling, the number 2 promotion in the US, does quarterly pay-per-view events at the moment, which I think, as a student of media, is the right way to go about things in an era of very heavy content saturation in general. You're gonna have more benefit from either being a megacore who can just own everything and collect rent, or you want to be focusing very much more on special events, which you can charge a higher premium on, and use all the various forms of communication we have to further hype up and make it a more exciting special moment, and get appeal through that means. So that's what All Elite's doing, because pay-per-view in wrestling has been a monthly occurrence since about 1996 when WCW started doing it.
I also think the quarterly format is a lot better for pay-per-views to just help them carry more weight and feel more special.
Yep.
My experience with pay-per-views has only been this. I haven't actually watched pay-per-views beforehand, but this seems to work, and also doesn't cost me a whole lot of money to keep up with them, which is great.
No. Certainly an important moment in an era when everyone's getting fired. So, here we are in the COVID-19 era, as it will probably be known in the history books when looking at media production. And we have a situation where, faced with lockdowns and severely restricted movement, strictly speaking, the correct thing for pro wrestling to do is to not run. But people want to make money. And so, as we live in a world driven by profit motive, people will find ways to stretch the rules. So currently, basically the only wrestling that's happening is WWE and All Elite Wrestling. And there are differences in how they produce their shows. WWE has a very bare bones staffing. They use a building in Florida that they own, the WWE Performance Center, and they just have the competitors wrestling their matches with the referee. They have a couple of commentators and the camera crew, and that's it at any one time, which means that every match is essentially an empty arena match. Just dead silence, nothing but the sound of them grunting and exerting, which can occasionally work. Something we're seeing over the course of this, because wrestlers being forced to do this constantly are working out ways that you construct your match. And what I guess the main 2 points to differ it from working a crowd is you want matches to be shorter on average, and you want, basically, the closer you are to doing simulated sport rather than all the theatrics that you use to accentuate points and appeal to a crowd to get them to make noise, the less of those things you do in comparison to just grappling, the better the match will wind up being. And otherwise from production, the big difference between WWE and AEW is that AEW also uses a fairly bare bones staff setup, but all the wrestlers who aren't wrestling the matches are instead hanging around the outside of the ring, playing the role of the audience, which is really, it's fun because you've got noise, so you get that sense of unity and community, which is an important aspect to pro wrestling as a medium. And also, from a production standpoint, is interesting because generally in wrestling, you want to be guiding the crowd to do the things you want to tell the story you want. But the crowds have their own minds and will sometimes do something different. You'll do everything you can to telegraph who to cheer for and why you should like them, and the crowd will just decide to boo that day. Or they'll throw a beach ball, or they'll chant along to the countdown on a timer and just do a buzzing sound every 10 seconds to amuse themselves for whatever reason. But here, you have an audience that is able to do exactly what you want it to do at all times.
Yeah, the AEW pseudo crowd was doing a good job of approximating a wrestling crowd. I believe there were ECW chants, there were so-and-so sucks chants, like, you know, the normal fare.
A couple of "this is awesome's" well placed. That's
Yes.
going to be useful for...
That didn't feel too self-congratulatory.
Yeah, that's like that. Slipping in a couple of those is very useful for just reusing the footage in later video packages.
But yeah, no, it does occur to me that with the, you know, planned out nature of where they know what they're supposed to be chanting, or presumably they've been told what to do, functions almost a bit more like a Greek chorus than a wrestling crowd.
Yes, that's what I want whenever we talk wrestling. Comparisons to older media and high art.
The thing I noticed that we talked about during the actual show was that because, you know, just having the wrestlers there is a much smaller amount of people than having a full crowd, you could hear what individual people were saying.
Almost
And
that indie show vibe.
That had a great vibe. I loved just occasionally hearing someone shout a very particular jeer. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head right now, but some of them just made me stop and go, I want to know who just shouted that so that I can cheer them on later.
Yeah, just every now and then you just hear in amongst the usual just general white noise and the cheer and the boo, you just hear an occasional like, "Hey, you suck," which is absolutely what you get at an indie show. And it really adds to that personability and approachability of this show, of feeling like these are people who you're kind of hanging out and think you're cool.
And occasionally you recognize the voice too, like this pay-per-view had Vicky Guerrero as a guest, who has, as many people would know, a very recognizable voice.
She has a very distinct screech.
Yep.
So I guess we should start running down this card. Should I just say the competitors of the match and who won? Or I do have here the rundowns of the match written by Joseph Courier, which I could quickly go through.
I was thinking, who's in the match and who won, and then we give a rundown of it to the best of our ability.
Yep.
What I had in mind.
Sure thing. And this is all a test run. We're all working things out here. So we did not see the pre-show match because we are bad at working out how Fight TV's timer indication goes. Every time we've done this, because we've done this for All Out, Full Gear, Revolution, and now Double or Nothing the second. And every time we can't remember if the Fight TV timer is indicating the time until the pre-show, which airs on free-to-air TV and YouTube to convince you to buy the pay-per-view, or if that countdown is to indicate the start of the actual pay-per-view segment. I'm going to put this here on the record so we remember each time. The timer is to indicate the start of the pay-per-view proper. So if we want to watch the pre-show, which often will have 1 or 2 matches that are quite fun, we need to start an hour earlier than the timer says.
I need to wake up an hour earlier than the timer says.
I was up. I was just trying to not make noise elsewhere.
I had gone to sleep 2 hours earlier, so...
I was conscious but lazy.
So yeah, we did not see...
Basically the same as asleep.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we didn't see the opener, which was in the pre-show, which was the Best Friends defeating Private Party. Was it Private Party?
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, Best Friends defeated Private Party, meaning that they are #1 contenders for the Tag Team Championships. So they can prove that they are the best tag team wrestlers in the world at some point. Probably on Dynamite. But we shall see. For anyone who's listening to this who's not familiar with AEW's structure, they have a weekly television show on TNT called Dynamite, which is their main source of storytelling. They also have a YouTube show called AEW Dark, which pops up on Tuesdays their time, Wednesdays our time, in Australia, where a bunch of other matches that they tape at each Dynamite taping happen, and that contributes to win-loss records, and there are often bits of story building that go on there, especially with the wrestlers that aren't on Dynamite every week. And there is a show called Being the Elite, which predates AEW. I might talk about the origins of this company some other time, but basically, it started off as a series of video logs by Tag Team the Young Bucks, and has kind of morphed into a series of bizarre sketch comedy, additional content contributing to storylines, and experimental short films.
It's really weird, and I love it.
Yeah, it's quite the show. So the first match of the show proper was the Casino Ladder match, which was for the #1 contendership. If you win this match by grabbing a giant casino chip atop a ladder, then you will be in line to have a fight to be the world champion. Competitors, the process for this one was sort of like a WWE Royal Rumble. There are 2 people in there to begin with. Every 2 minutes, exactly 2 minutes, there was a big timer to prove it, displaying behind them at all times, so it wasn't just an overlay that they can be deceptive with. Every 2 minutes, another competitor would come in until there were 9 competitors, and then if you happen to win before then, sweet, you won quick. But, you promise that there's going to be 9 competitors, they're all going to get in. And so yeah, Brian Cage won this. Let's talk about the journey to Brian Cage winning this match. Thoughts on the ladder match?
Thought it was it was good pace for ladder match. It had excitement without feeling over the top. I believe we were saying at the end of the match, we were not bored at any point, but we also didn't feel like anyone's life was genuinely in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Which is about the right sweet spot for a ladder match. So it started with 2 members of SCU
Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian.
in the ring. They hesitated a bit before going at each other, as you would expect, tag team. They did a very good job, I think, at the start of that. Like, they were dodging out of the way of each other's moves, and the announcer saying, "Oh, well, they know each other so well," and you do get that point across in their interchange. Then at a point where they're both a little incapacitated, the third competitor, whose name escapes me, comes in.
Kip Sabian.
With
multiple cronies.
With, yes, both his partner and another flunky there to assist. The flunky sneaks up behind, smacks both of them with a ladder, giving him the advantage to go for it, but he's stopped in time. Fourth entrant, I believe, was Orange Cassidy?
Darby Allin was
Darby
fourth.
Allin, yes, sorry. Darby Allin came out to stop him. Fought with, I believe, Kazarian outside the ring, and then laid him out on a ladder and went up another ladder and dropped off on a skateboard, missing him and kayfabe busting up his knee, incapacitating himself for most of the rest of the match.
Oh yeah, he was selling that he tweaked his knee on this ollie onto a ladder, but like that bump was very scary looking.
Like, I could legitimately have bought that he hurt him, like, legitimately busted his knee doing that.
Yeah, especially since there were multiple injuries on this week's episode of Dynamite leading up to this.
That ladder that he jumped off of was very high above the ladder he jumped onto, and when he did jump onto it, I'm not sure if that was a trick ladder or something, but that ladder definitely bent very dramatically in the middle, so I could totally buy that being a real injury.
Yeah, the great thing about wrestling is you can use a lot of smoke and mirrors with props, which is often quite good because it helps to cushion the impact that you're taking from such a bump as well. But quite often, wrestling is full of carnies who work on the cheap, and so it'll just be whatever's the cheapest ladder we could get in paint and time. In these early stages of the match, something I really liked is when Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky opened the match. It is quite often a weird booking decision to make. 2 people in a singles competition match, 2 people on the same team starting out the match. It's like, are you setting up that there's dissension in the ranks or something? But instead what they did is, it's 2 people, they're friends, they're teammates. They initially went to grab a ladder and then decided, no, let's not do the ladder. Let's, like, grapple each other in a good, friendly, clean way. See which one of us is clearly deserving to be the better grappler and get that World Championship chance. And if they win in that time, then they'll just pick up a ladder and climb to the top.
Yeah. There's a good way for them to do that. There was a bit of a spot where I was worried. I think it was during the time when Darby Allin had just come out, where the heel, goddamn, I can't remember his goddamn name.
Kip Sabian. Super bad Kip Sabian.
Hit one of the SCU members in the back with a chair, and then the other one came in to help and took the chair off him. And by that point, the other SCU member turned around and for a second thought he had hit him with the chair. I was worried at that point that they were going to do a dissension in the ranks thing there, but they ended up not doing that. I was glad to see that.
And those sorts of moments is one of the fun things about pro wrestling is it is a serial. Any one show that you watch, while a complete show in itself, featuring matches which are themselves complete stories in themselves, they're always chapters in a broader story. And so those little beats, the more that you watch wrestling, this is part of what can make it an addictive thing to watch, is when wrestling is good, people will be putting in these little details that you notice and implant ideas over time. So then, say, 6 or 8 months down the track, if there is some dissension, then you see the little moments which set off that frustration with each other.
Going back to the progress of the match, I believe after Darby Allin threw himself off a ladder, maybe I think that was when Orange Cassidy comes in next?
Yep.
Cool, yes. Orange Cassidy comes out, the ring's completely open, plenty of ladders around. He comes out, he walks over to the commentator's desk and asks, how do I win this? And they say, oh, you've got to climb to the top. It's like, it looks, but that's really high up. He walks into the middle of the ring, reaches his hands up. Oh, I can't reach. He gets a ladder out. He stands on top of the ladder flat on the ground. Oh, I can't reach.
Mm-hmm.
It's really high up. I've tried nothing and I'm out of ideas.
Then I believe at one point he, just before the rest of the competitors, who are all outside of the ring and all like sort of dazed on the floor, just before they all get up and come in to stop him, he finally picks up a ladder and holds it up to climb it, but he doesn't open it up because he's too lazy to do that, so it just sort of falls straight to the ground. Because that is how Orange Cassidy do.
The rules comments, so there's multiple layers to this. Obviously, there's some good humor here about a guy whose gimmick is he doesn't like wrestling and is mostly apathetic about things in general. But also, this one metatextually felt like a dig at WWE's recent Money in the Bank pay-per-view, where the closing match of that show is a ladder match in order to get a number one contendership. And for like 4 weeks leading up to that, at least 15 times a show, every WWE show would remind you the rules of the match. You must climb the building, get on the roof, climb the ladder, and get the thing. And they hammered it down over and over again, repeating the rules over and over and over again. And yet, even so, in the match, one woman was apparently too stupid to understand these rules, saw a briefcase in a conference room, and thought that was the prize. So, it was delivered in such a way where you have ambiguity. Is this explicitly a dig at WWE overselling and ramming down ideas into your head? Or is this just an amusing moment? There's that intrigue floating around there, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Coming in after Orange Cassidy, can you recall?
I don't think it was the last competitor.
No, we're at 5 so far. The audience is calling. Yes.
Ah. I feel bad. I kind of forgot Colt Cabana was in this match after the rest of the pay-per-view because
he was there. He was there to be a body.
He was there to be a body. He spent most of the time getting bodied.
And that's fine. Something that when you listen to wrestlers talking about things is you can build up the expectation that everyone could and should be the number one at all times. But just like when you're watching, say, whatever popular action manga you're reading at the moment, a My Hero Academia or a Naruto, like, you got your Narutos and you got your Sasukes, but you kind of need your Chojis to be filling the ranks and being there to add some depth and some breadth to the storyline, and sometimes not everyone needs to be the main character.
Problem with that is that if we're talking about, like, in that context, and also more in the context of WWE, you often end up with the writers being so incompetent that they've made the secondary characters who you're not supposed to care so much about way more interesting and likable than your main characters.
Yes, but we're not here to talk about WWE.
We're talking about AEW here, and they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. This was not Colt Cabana's night. He had a good fight with Kip Sabian on TV a few weeks ago. He got murdered by Lance Archer a couple of weeks after that. And he was here to be someone who's trying to become world champion and get to that main character position, but wasn't his night.
Who was after that?
Joey Janela.
It was.
So Rey Fenix, one of my favorite luchadores, was supposed to be in here right now, but he had a shoulder injury on last week's Dynamite. So he's been replaced by Joey Janela, who did a bunch. This is... We talked about not being afraid for people's lives that much. That Darby Allin Ollie was a very scary spot, but Joey Janela was remarkably safe, because that is a guy who when people talk to Joey Janela and they try to give feedback and advice and talk about the bumps that he takes, and they're like, think about what you're going to be like when you're like 40 years old and the consequences of the damage you're doing to yourself. And his response is quite seriously, I'm going to be dead by then.
Joey Janela is a lunatic and managed to not be a lunatic in this match, and that made me pretty happy, honestly, because he's great, and I want to see more of him over a decent period of time.
Coming in at number 8 is Luchasaurus, a tall man who is a luchador and also a dinosaur.
Luchasaurus is always very visible in this match, from the moment he enters to the very end, just because he's huge and wears a dinosaur mask.
Yeah, it was entered and played kind of a strongman role until entrant number 8 eventually comes in, just throwing people around. He's getting offense in. I don't believe there are many people attempting to climb the ladder spots. It's mostly just offense being thrown around. But I believe it was at when number 8 was coming in. I believe Kit Sabian was trying to climb the ladder, and then the surprise entrant number 2 got announced.
Yes. We've missed a number in here somewhere and skipped a point because, Luchasaurus was number 8 and coming in was number 9. Yes, the debuting Brian Cage, a very big man, Excalibur on commentary making a mention of him operating like a machine. This is a nod to his gimmick in Lucha Underground, where he would state in every promo that he's not a man, he's a machine. And his theme music would open with a recording of a guy saying, "I'm a machine," because he's like a machine. Brian Cage is a fantastic example of the culture of people who become wrestlers in the 21st century, where once upon a time, the carny traditions of wrestling meant that people who became wrestlers were quite often basically bullies. People who wanted to have the aesthetics of being tough, but without actually competing in sports where they can lose. Rather ones where they can use their personality backstage in order to be just handed victories. But people who tend to have that sort of attitude tend to be convinced to take up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wind up languishing in the undercard of an MMA show. So nowadays, the people that tend to become wrestlers are nerds who watched wrestling, thought it was cool to do some athletics, and then become wrestlers. So everyone in wrestling now is a goddamn nerd. So Brian Cage is pretty tall. He's quite wide. He
looks like a Vince McMahon wet dream from the 90s.
Oh yeah, he is almost entirely muscle. Basically no body fat. Probably does steroids to get that condition, that physique, because he's, especially in the COVID era, he was still looking pretty dang jacked. But here's the thing. You see a guy like that, and you think he's going to be a total jock meathead bodybuilder. What does his moveset include? Names like Weapon X and Drill Claw, because not only is he referencing Wolverine from the X-Men, it's specifically Wolverine's moveset from the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting game series.
Just, honestly, you look at Kenny Omega, and I could buy that guy. Looks like he's athletic, but also a nerd. But you see Cage, and you're just like,
Yep, that's wrestling in the 21st century.
And this is AEW. The guy who runs the company, Cody Rhodes, well, kind of runs the company.
Twice, eh?
Yeah, he's an extremely handsome man and an enormous Star Trek nerd.
Yep.
To the point of, you should just go and listen to him and Tony. I almost called him Schiavone. Tony Schiavone just talking about Star Trek during ad breaks. It's fantastic.
Now, think about that period where Cody's older brother Dustin, who's in his 50s, wanted to play some of them Nintendos. And that bizarre Twitter conversation of Cody recommending how to buy a Nintendo Switch and what games to pick up for it.
I remember looking that up and just, it looks great. It is definitely worth looking at.
So Cage comes out and he starts bodying everyone left and right. Luchasaurus manages to put up a bit of resistance, but he's taking them all out. He goes to climb the ladder because everyone's laid out around him, and Orange Cassidy comes out and Yoda's himself onto Cage's back. And Cage just yeah, sure, I'll roll with it. He climbs the ladder with Orange Cassidy on his back until everyone comes out there and drags him down. They start beating up. It looks like Orange Cassidy's going to try and get back onto his back, but he eventually just joins in beating him up. They beat him up. They line up, they hit him with a ladder while he's trying to shrug them off. They throw him out of the ring. They put a ladder on top of him. They put another ladder on. 5 of them go and pick up one of the giant...
they put a barricade on him as well after that.
They go and pick up one of the giant prop poker chips for the thing and lay it on top of him like a giant tombstone seal to keep him locked away for the rest of the match. And they get back to trying to fight each other.
That spot was fantastic. I love it when you have a big, terrifying monster appear in a free-for-all situation. Everyone goes, you know what? We all need to fight, unite right now to deal with this fucking guy. There was a match which... Oh, no, it was slightly before Cage's introduction in Lucha Underground, but the first Battle Royal that they had there, the Aztec Warfare, had a similar situation where the setup going in was our hero, Prince Puma, is the first entrant out of 30, or 20 rather, and the villainous zombie... the zombie luchador, Mil Muertes, the man of 1,000 deaths, was set to come in last. And so as soon as he comes in, everyone hates that guy so much that he gets pinned by like 8 people at once because no one wants to deal with this fucking guy. Love it whenever these spots occur. I believe after this big pile-up... Oh, go on, Max.
We missed out on some spots earlier in this match that I'd sort of like to go over. There were several times in this match when people did try to climb the ladder to get to it and failed. The spot with Cage climbing with Cassidy on his back was mentioned. But at one point, I believe Kip Sabian swings one of SCU into the ropes, and then he uses the momentum to get like all the way to the top of the ladder as fast as you can climb a ladder. And it was great because he climbed a ladder fast.
Yeah. So if you're somehow listening to this without being much aware of wrestling, there is a trope in ladder matches, which is that wrestlers are incapable of climbing ladders. Since you want to be slow and dramatic and build that tension of will they, won't they, it often means that people climb ladders at a rate of 1 step every 10 minutes. So there were multiple instances in this match of people climbing ladders very quickly and an opponent realizing, oh shit, they're about to win, I must act right now to stop it. Which was really cool and exciting and just really good for maintaining that verisimilitude that, yeah, these are competitors trying to win to become best in the world.
And even on the couple of occasions where it was a slow ladder climb, they gave a valid enough reason. Like,
commentary was tremendous at discussing that. Commentary was tremendous
the whole way through, obviously. There's a point where Darby Allin's finally gotten back up from nearly killing himself, kayfabe, and goes to climb the ladder, but of course he screwed up his leg, so it's a slow climb. There's a point where it's like the ladder's shaking a bit as one of them climbs it, so yeah, he's slowed down the climb a little
and
bit.
Commentary talking about how unstable the ring flooring is for putting something like a ladder on it, and so it's naturally going to shake a lot. So, hey, that makes sense. So Brian Cage, he overcomes these hideous odds, all these villainous competitors trying to keep him out of the match. He shoves everything off him and manages to beat them all up and win the match, basically. We forgot the most important section of this match.
There was a bit in this match, which I'm not sure if it's the bit you were talking about, but there was a bit in it leading up to Brian Cage breaking out when, I can't remember who, but someone drops Kip Sabian onto...
Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, right, it was Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy drops Kip Sabian... Was it Kip Sabian dropping Orange Cassidy?
No, it might be a different spot. Go ahead.
But it drops him onto the pile of stuff they've laid on top of Brian Cage.
Yes.
And it's like they've broken the seal containing Brian Cage, and then he breaks out and wins the match.
That is what sets things up. Yeah, it's great. I guess the only other part of this match we haven't really mentioned is there is a run-in in this match by one Marco Stunt, the shortest man on the roster, who is so short that he comes with a Marco Stunt-sized ladder.
Yes, Luchasaurus tries to chokeslam Orange Cassidy because he's the much bigger man. Orange Cassidy breaks out and counters. Orange Cassidy puts his hand around Luchasaurus' neck to chokeslam, but Luchasaurus is significantly taller and heavier, so he can't do it. Marco stunt runs in, stands on a tiny ladder so he's as tall as Orange Cassidy, and with the assistance of Luchasaurus, who he teams with, choke slams Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, that spot rules.
There is another spot. There's Orange Cassidy's climbing a ladder to try and get to the chip. Kit Sabian notices and climbs the ladder to stop him. They lock hands, and Orange Cassidy manages to shove him off the ladder into another ladder in the corner. Kit Sabian's girlfriend Penelope is there. She climbs the ladder to try and stop Orange Cassidy. She throws a swing that he blocks. She throws another swing that he blocks. He shrugs and lets go of her hands, making her fall into the same ladder. Yeah,
intergender wrestling is, I feel like, a topic for another one of these if we get to it. But that was a very well constructed spot. You want to be careful. You always want to be careful to, when you're doing intergender stuff, especially when the woman is the villain, to be very careful that it's like someone nasty being thwarted and outsmarted rather than a situation of just a man who is bigger and stronger exerting their power and doing violence on a woman. And this spot was quite well executed. So,
yeah, just Orange Cassidy did not physically hurt her in any way. He just let her own hubris be her downfall. Just block, and then she had already unbalanced herself, and he just let her fall.
And so Brian Cage emerges from the unsealed tomb that he was placed in, knocks as many people away as he can, begins to climb the cage. Darby Allin is the one to attempt to stop him with the last of his strength. Brian Cage instead gets off the ladder, picks him up, hits him for the drill claw to demonstrate his immense power of his finisher, climbs the ladder, and wins. We have a scary new opponent, a very large man, who's already set to challenge to become the best in the world against Jon Moxley by winning this match. And I think this is a really good tone setter for the show in general of just, this was very creative, very fun, quite uplifting, left some openings for what can happen in the future, and was also a relatively safe match. This was no Young Bucks versus the Briscoes at Ring of Honor Final Battle. We have someone in the audience going, oh fuck, I remember that one. It's good. Good wrestling. Match 2. Maxwell Jacob Friedman defeated the Jungle Boy Jack Perry in a professional wrestling match. No stipulations here.
Yeah, this one was fairly by the books, competent heel. Is not like he cheats because he's a heel. It's what he does, but he's not a chicken shit heel. He's not gonna run away forever and do that. No, he exerts the fact that he is slightly larger and slightly stronger. They throw mixed offense at each other. He does the smart thing. He targets the arm he's going to use for his submission maneuver. Jungle Boy, Ric Flair chops him in the chest a bajillion times.
Yeah, the use of chops was they had a chopping battle, which was all about demonstrating Maxwell is pretty big and pretty tough, and a very smart competitor. He spent this targeting a specific body part, which is one that will be useful for him to use his preferred armbar on, as well as hurting a lot of Jungle Boy's offense, which involves a lot of grapples and chops. But these chops demonstrate how every time MJF hits Jungle Boy hurts a bit. Every time Jungle Boy does it to MJF reels and takes several steps back in pain. And so MJF can only take the lead here by conditioning his opponent to such a point where he commits to the chops and Maxwell ducks under and then gets the grip. Oh, run-ins. Big run-ins happening
interference.
here.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this was a real good old-fashioned wrestling match. We have two competitors. One of them cheats, one of them doesn't. The one who cheats spends the whole time trying to weaken his opponent in particular ways, and then doing things like feigning injuries in order to get his opponent's guard down, and then immediately rushing in.
There's a point where Jungle Boy had laid MJF outside the ring. I forget precisely with what, but MJF is... Oh, there's a point where a separate point where MJF does the Ric Flair strut and drop after getting hit. But he's laid...
Oh, yeah! They fucking trade blows, and MJF flare flops in such a way that he falls forward onto Jungle Boy, who's fallen down from exhaustion.
Yeah. But anyway, Jungle Boy's laid MJF out outside the ring. MJF's staring wide-eyed up at the top while he's in a star pose. Jungle Boy, with his arm injured, uses his head and remaining arm to get MJF into the ring. He goes to the top rope. MJF grabs the referee's leg and starts trying to pull her in front of the blow. In the confusion, as she reels away, she hits the top rope, causing Jungle Boy to fall down and lose his position, allowing MJF to slam him, I believe, and pick up the... No, wait, sorry. Then they doesn't pick up the pinfall off of that. They exchange unconventional surprise pins, of which MJF eventually gets the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a good match, but like I've had a bit of a complaint about Maxwell Jacob Friedman, which I'm still going to say, which is just that it feels like we've had the way I described it is, it feels like we've had Vegeta before Goku's shown up for about a year. And I'm getting a little bit sick of it. I kind of just want Goku to show up and kick his ass.
I'm perfectly fine with the amount of winning he has. You want some villains to be very strong, especially since a lot of the villains have been thwarted either on this show or the previous. Chris Jericho lost the World Championship at the last pay-per-view. Brody Lee lost at this one. Lance Archer lost at this one. Having at least one villain who's the most smarmiest, most hateable of them all, continuing to find ways to sneak out those wins is going to make it all the more satisfying when he finally does have that loss on his record.
Yeah, I respect Max's take, and I definitely understand where it's coming from, but like there was a period of time where MJF was a heel conveniently aligned with the face faction that was enjoyable to see. I feel like there's been variety in the way it's been done. His undefeated streak's been continuing. You know, he'll pull out a diamond ring to knock someone out.
Yeah, he cheated in very different ways to how he usually cheats here.
Exactly.
He's got a broader arsenal.
Yeah, because like, he has a large man assistant who interferes, and a lot of the time he has a diamond ring that
hardest metal known to man.
Yeah, that he'll knock people out with. But this was just some old school conventional cheating, which made for a good and refreshing change of pace for this one.
Yeah, this was a good match, and I feel like it's like the second or third of what will probably be we'll probably see this matchup like hundreds of times over the years, because they're both very young and both work really well together.
Moving on, I believe that brings us to the TNT Championship match.
Yes, the finals of the TNT Championship tournament, with belt presented by Iron Mike Tyson.
Wait, was this before or after the Shawn Spears thing?
That's way later in the card.
Oh, that's way later in the card? Okay.
Yeah, they unveil the belt. They're trying to make it not the mid-card belt, as in, like, they're trying to make it not the lesser championship.
Narratively, they're trying to make it seem just as important as a world championship. Aesthetically, it's the most mid-card belt they've got.
It's a red leather with silver on top monstrosity. It reminds people a bit, unfortunately, of the WWE Jam belt.
The Universal Championship.
Yeah, the main problem that we all sort of noted is that it's a really bright red leather, like way too bright a red. If the leather was more of sort of like a rich maroon, or if the leather was black and then the lettering of TNT on the front of the belt was that bright red instead, that would look a lot better than it does. It's very distractingly garishly.
Silver and red is very hard to make work together, and this is too bright.
The two competitors come out accompanied by their vintage wrestler,
their coaches.
Their coaches, Cody Rhodes with Arn Anderson, and Lance Archer with Jake the Snake Roberts, who has been doing a fantastic job of just reprising his pure evil from his glory days.
The decades of abuse that Jake Roberts has done to his body kind of pay off in spades, because he just looks and sounds like a terrifying old monster man.
I realize a little bit like who he reminds me of a little bit, like slightly visually and in like kind of the way he's talking a bit. He reminds me of the Bad from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He seems like a Western movie villain.
Oh yeah, I mean he's from Texas as well. It helps a lot.
The match starts. Lance Archer decidedly has the upper hand. I believe he hits Cody with his finisher like within the opening minute, and Cody has to escape to the outside, heavily winded to avoid that.
He transitioned from his elevated chokeslam, the blackout, straight into trying to go for the Iron Claw, a vintage Dallas, Texas finisher right there, which he's used quite effectively in New Japan. But Cody was able to reverse that into an armbar and force the breakout. And that was the only time that we saw the claw even gone for in this match. So Lance Archer still has tools which have not been defeated.
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job just in that opening bit of making Cody look clever and Lance look absolutely terrifying, which is definitely the aesthetic they're going for in this match.
Yeah, you need to use cunning and guile if you cannot outmuscle the very strong man.
And Cody's not a small guy, but next to, I believe, 6'8" Lance Archer, it seems like, small guy versus big guy matchup that you'd be expecting to see every so often. And for most of the match, Lance Archer is overpowering Cody Rhodes, and Cody Rhodes is outsmarting Lance Archer with the offense. I do forget most of the flow of the rest of it, unfortunately.
There was a lot of... This match was quite slow, and a lot of them brawling to the outside and getting knocked outside in various ways and making their way back in. Lance Archer at one point removing the padding on one of the turnbuckles. And immediately... And again, Cody once again outsmarting his opponent, who's going for something vicious, and he finds a way to use the momentum against him and force Lance Archer into that exposed turnbuckle. Cool stuff.
There is an interesting moment in this where Arn Anderson cheats in Cody's favor, which was not what I expected from this match. It wasn't a super huge cheat. I think he just sort of held Lance Archer back for a moment to give Cody the time to stand up.
And this is after times like Lance has already cheated beforehand, so a little bit of turnabout is fair play. Yeah. But also, does Arn really have Cody's best interests at heart? Ooh.
I mean, I got the feel from it that Cody also is not really I suppose like because he's the face for the moment, Cody doesn't cheat per se, but like Cody's not the purest baby face.
He's been around long enough to know that sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to get the job done.
Yeah.
That spot actually led into a bit more of a spot where Lance Archer got ejected, and
Anderson got ejected.
Sorry.
Arn Anderson and Jake.
Sorry. Arn Anderson got ejected. Jake the Snake Roberts was then gloating over it. Then he got ejected. Then he tried to come back with the snake that he always carries with him. Except what we haven't mentioned about this is that we had Mike Tyson delivering the belt. And Mike Tyson, when Jake came back, just sort of stood up and was like, "You want to go?"
And this is after the last week of Dynamite where Jake Roberts was talking about, "Oh yeah, man, if it comes to fighting Mike Tyson, I'm going to let Lance Archer have the first hit on him."
Yeah, so the whole match, every so often, it's just cutting back to Mike Tyson gleefully enjoying the fight, with one exception where they catch him when he's yawning. But
yeah, terrible direction cut right there. There are a couple of miscuts like that.
It struck me a bit as like, yes, the Emperor Mike Tyson is pleased with your fight.
Especially the opening thing, because it's not just the very first exchange in this match is Lance Archer hitting the blackout. Mike Tyson's still in view as it happens, and so he has this moment of being taken aback as shock that Lance Archer's going in just as the bell rings. And as soon as he sees that blackout hit, you just see this glee and delight in his face that, this guy's fucking him up.
Yeah. Jake the Snake Roberts, at the point that Max mentioned, like he comes in with a bag, which, anyone who's seen anything of him knows there's a big snake in that bag. Mike Tyson stands up, takes off his shirt, shows he's still in pretty freaking good shape for a man of his age. And Jake Snake Roberts looks tearful almost as he backs down and does not interfere. Cody's back is turned. Lance Archer tries to hit him with offense again. Cody slams the second. What's his version of Dream Street's called? Or it hits his finisher. Crossroads. He hits the Crossroads.
Yes, puns.
For the second time in the match, goes for the pin. 1, kicks out. Goes for another Crossroads. Pin. 2, kick out. Gets up. Is chokeout? No, it's a different match. I believe it was just a third. Yeah, a third Crossroads. He has to hit him with 3 Crossroads after having already done a bunch of, high impact offense to put Lance Archer down. And, so as Pidgey mentioned, he doesn't thwart all of Lance Archer's offense. He has to hit him really hard, repeatedly, to put him down. So it's the kind of victory where Lance Archer still comes away looking like a legitimate, powerful threat who could have easily beaten Cody.
Yeah, today just wasn't his day.
Yeah. Cody wins today.
Mm-hmm. Next time, who knows what will happen. But I pity any poor jobber who's going to have to fight Lance Archer next. All right,
They're going to get clawed.
We have a brief interview between Alex Marvez and Dr. Sampson, one of the ringside paramedics, who is here for a status report on Dr. Britt Baker, who is a dentist and a wrestler who had a fracture on her knee on Wednesday. And she will be back on Dynamite on Wednesday to announce when she will be able to return. This was just a great little interview where the doctor is delivering all the verbiage that Britt Baker uses to be a massive jerk. And just with these slight barriers of, God, I hate treating this patient. She's the worst to deal with.
Her injuries are pretty bad, but they're nowhere near as terrible as actually having to work with her.
Good little segment. And again, really good example of just how fun this show was to watch. Almost every segment was about trying to bring some excitement, some joy, make you laugh a bit. Chris Statlander fighting Penelope Ford as a replacement for Dr. Britt Baker, with an extremely banged up Kip Sabian backing her up.
He didn't take the hardest bumps in that match, and yet he's got, bandages on both knees, both elbows, his head, his neck. He's walking with crutches all the way across his midriff. He's halfway to being a mummy, and he's walking with crutches down to the ring like he's just...
He can't even get into the ring. It's too painful for him. We talked before about how MJF is a smarmy dickhead, but he's not quite a coward. Kip Sabian is 100% a coward. The second he takes the slightest injury, tape it all up. Yeah, so the AEW women's division is in this unfortunate spot where WWE basically locked up all the best women in pro wrestling at the moment, the ones that aren't in Stardom or the couple that are in TNA. So what they've got, like a lot of the roster on AEW, is a lot of very young, talented people, some of whom are still quite inexperienced. So the more that these women get to wrestle on TV, the better they're going to get. And I think that the women's matches tonight were a good example of how they are starting to get there. There were very few really badly botched spots in this match. It all flowed. It wasn't boring. It was, hey, they fought, and once again, the good guy won.
Kip Sabian as a manager, I think I enjoy a lot more than Kip Sabian as a wrestler. I want to see Penelope Ford wrestle more just to have Kip Sabian there being a shit heel manager.
I want to see Kip Sabian in these bandages for like 6 weeks of TV.
Oh yeah,
like full on the Bret Hart in the wheelchair stuff. Have you ever seen the Bret Hart in the wheelchair stuff? Oh, that owns. When he starts leaping out of the chair to jump with joy, realizing people can see him and getting back in the chair, screaming in pain. Beautiful.
Yeah. But the other thing is there was one bit in this match that was you could count as a botch, which was just Chris Statlander does not know how to sell a stunner.
Yeah, the stunner's a very easy move. It's one of those great pro wrestling moves because it's extremely easy and safe to do. The person delivering the stunner simply puts their hands around the opponent's neck and then sits down. And the opponent just needs to move with that downward motion and then fall back and be all, whoa, I'm being knocked out, knocked a bit loopy. Or if you want to sell this stunner as being really devastating, you do like 8 backflips. But
You backflip, get back up, fall back down again.
and Statlander just kind of just wobbled a bit in an awkward way. It didn't look very good, but that was the only real standout sloppy moment.
Yeah. Penelope got some decent offense in. The shit heel Sabian on the outside as manager finds himself when Penelope needs some rest, trying to put himself between her and Statlander, trying to fend her off with a crutch. Good heel manager work there. But yeah, Chris Statlander eventually gets the win. Yeah.
She hits the Big Bang Theory piledriver to win. So next up is Dustin Rhodes with Brandy Rhodes defeating Shawn Spears in a match. So I want to talk a bit about card structure. Generally, what you want to do is much like a music festival, you want to start with your weakest option and build bigger and bigger and bigger to the more important and most exciting things at the end. That's how successful promotions do things, whether it's New Japan nowadays, AEW for the most part nowadays, your world classes and your WCWs and by which I mean more like Jim Crockett promotion style, or your Calgarys and stuff. That's how they would structure things. WWE doesn't do this. What they do is they have this theory that people can only be excited so many times in one night. And what you need to do is to bring the crowd down before you bring it back up. So they will intentionally structure the show in such a way that there are really boring or lame matches with people you don't care about in between the important matches. And what happens when you do this is the crowd gets brought back down, and then they aren't excited anymore, and they stop being excited. So this is a good example of the sort of match that WWE would put second to last on the card is just, here's some geeks, watch them be geeks, don't care, and I guess you should be excited for the end. Whereas here it was put, hey, we've had some fairly green wrestlers for a bit, and we've had some very exciting title changes. So let's have a match where a super confident dickhead gets his ass kicked in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's the very brief lead up to this match, because it doesn't need much lead up, is Dustin Rhodes being injured by Lance Archer in the process of the tournament. Shawn Spears is under the impression that he's too injured and he's not going to be able to compete in a match, but he nonetheless called for one because he wants a free count-out victory on his absent opponent. So Shawn Spears, in a full suit, clearly not expecting a fight, walks down to the ring, calls for the count-out. The referee objects because he's not here. He's like, yeah, he's not in the ring. Ring the bell, start the count-out. Briefly before that, when he's like, oh, he's not going to be coming, Dustin Rhodes' music plays, and he's got his back turned to the camera, pretending to freak out, and then he very slowly turns around, smirking at the camera, saying, oh, you guys are too easy to fool. So then, in the middle of the count-out being called at the start, the music hits again. He's like, no, you idiots, you're only supposed to play it once. And then Brandy Rhodes comes out and distracts him for a little bit while Dustin Rhodes suddenly appears behind him.
And yeah, the course of the match is basically they go back and forth as Dustin steadily, bit by bit, undresses Shawn Spears until he's just down to his boxers, which feature a very interestingly placed copy of Tully Blanchard, his manager's head. And then, Dustin hits the final reckoning and pins him. Again, 5 minutes of making you laugh and smile to keep your excitement maintained.
Shawn Spears has not been selling himself much as a comedy wrestler in AEW. I'm surprised to see his chops here. He's got good expressions.
I feel like around the time of Fyter Fest, there was an idea to make Shawn Spears a much more serious villain. And whether it's decision made by Tony Khan, maybe it's just the experiences Shawn Spears is having, but it feels like for a bit they didn't know quite what to do with him, and are now just, this guy really is never going to be that great. So let's just build on his his skills as an enhancement talent to put people over, and just, if he can find ways to be funny while losing, then sure, let's have that happen for a bit. That's what it looks like they're doing right now.
Well, honestly, I think Sean Spears is really good at it, because
this was
a really fun match.
Like, that promo he did with the fake CNN segment on last week's Dynamite, and this match was the most fun I've had ever watching this guy. So, we had a graphic in tribute to the late Hana Kimura, who tragically ended her life yesterday. There's been a number of suicides in the last week that have hit me pretty hard. Get help. If you've... how much do I want to talk about this? If you're having trouble, talk to people and seek help. And talk to people who will encourage you to seek help. And you are not alone. We are... As cliched as it is to say we are all in this together, like, you are not alone. People will help you. You just need to talk to them. Alright, Hikaru Shida defeated Nyla Rose in a no count-out, no disqualifications match to win the AEW Women's World Championship.
Crowd approves. This is a very, like, not that the other women's match was not a strong match, it still was, but this was definitely by far the stronger of the two. It was a very powerful match. Nyla Rose comes out wielding a kendo stick, because why would you not bring a weapon if it's a, no disqualifications, no countouts match. Hikaru Shida comes out dressed, I believe, as Tifa Lockhart.
Yeah, it was a reskinned outfit. It was red rather than white for the tank top. But yeah, she was definitely cosplaying Tifa tonight, because again, everyone in wrestling is a goddamn nerd.
Match starts. Nyla, both of them try to go for the kendo. Like, first Nyla goes for it, and Hikaru manages to disarm her. She goes for the kendo stick. Nyla blocks it and disarms her and takes over for a bit. They're trading offense. Nyla Rose looks physically stronger, but Hikaru looks more technical. It's, monster heel versus technical face.
Classic stuff. They brought outside a lot. We had people going through tables, getting slammed onto these big goofy poker chips that they have for aesthetics and theming at the venue. I like it when shows are willing to do that sort of cheesy, gimmicky theming. Just, again, wrestling is an inherently camp medium, so you might as well lean into it. And yeah, lots of chips to slam people into, tables to go through. There's a moment towards the end when Shida once again finally reclaims the kendo stick that had been stolen from her, holds it high and aloft like she's just drawn the Master Sword, finally cracks Nyla Rose so hard that it snaps in half, and knees her up and gets the pin. And again, more heroes winning, because I think that's what we need pro wrestling to be at the moment. Just this absurd camp fake sport where you get to see the people you like win and can be reminded that good can triumph over evil.
Yeah. You just need a feel-good thing that's told well at this point.
And nothing super dramatic. Nothing particularly earth-shattering as far as the structure here. It was a pretty standard Shine Heat finish, but it worked. They worked it well. I was invested the whole time and wasn't bored. It was good.
I believe this match had some. This match had the bit with the kendo stick being drawn like the Master Sword, which also had Excalibur making a wonderful comment about it. But it also had a bit with.
Actually, Caliburn's the sword in the stone.
Yes, but shut up. But yeah, it had the bit with Nyla Rose just throwing Hikaru Shida over the barricades into a table, which broke the table in half. But it also had a bit where Hikaru Shida was being physically lifted up from the other side, like while she's up against the barricade by the face crowd on the other side of the barricade, which was something you can only really do with a fake crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, so we didn't mention that the audience is planted in such a way that it's only good guys on one side and baddies on the other. So yeah, being able to work that sort of spotting is, a unique feature of this time. Because you don't want to be doing spots involving audiences a lot when you got real audiences, because that will lead to things like fans trying to jump into the ring, which you don't want to have because it interferes. It can be a real public liability nightmare if nothing else. So yeah, fun time. AEW World Championship match. I like it when the World Championship match is always last, because the World Championship should be indicating who your main character is. But the thing about it is, like, if it's a person that's respected and impressive, then the belt has meaning. But also a key part to the belt having meaning and it being able to impart meaning on people by owning it is through the weight of history. And of course, this company is only a year old, and the belt's only been around since October of 2019. So you need to be consistently having it with that weight and importance consistently, so that way when someone wins it, they too become important. But second from the top on a show where the final match is a complete bundle of insanity, it's perfectly fine for this show, but I'm just saying my personal preference is to always have the World Championship last.
You know, I think I agree with that. Like, it was technically the last of the, live performance, air quotes, matches.
It was logistically okay. We taped the final match yesterday, so yeah, we can just wrap up the production inside this building now if we do it now.
Yeah, I suppose it lowers the amount of time they have to be producing in the building, but I felt like they could have played the recorded one first and then ended with this one.
I actually disagree with both of you. I think that this was perfect where it was, on account of the last match being so insane that it felt more like an epilogue than an actual match.
Yeah, and there's precedent there, because
the climax was the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's like, and there is precedent for AEW structuring this way, because Full Gear, there was the World Championship match followed by an unsanctioned match, which was Moxley versus Kenny Omega. So yeah, I guess we can view it the same way. So it is in a pretty dang important spot.
Regardless, yeah. The match,
yeah, Jon Moxley versus the Exalted One, Brody Lee.
The self-proclaimed champion, as Brody Lee had stolen Moxley's belt beforehand, and demands the announcer call him the self-proclaimed AEW champion.
A short-lived reign.
Your reign is at an end, Brody Lee, and not short enough it was. Yeah, it was a powerful match. It's the kind of match you'd expect from Jon Moxley, who likes to throw people through things and beat the crap out of people, and big strong man Brody Lee. Strangely enough, I don't remember a huge amount of the offense, other than obviously the end. It was, I think, a lot of fists flying, thrown into barricades.
Yeah, this was unlike a lot of even the other championship matches, which had a very clear, the good guy does stuff early on to remind you that they're cool, then the villain takes control for a long time to make you mad that they're winning, then the hero comes back and you go to the finish. This one was much more of almost a New Japan style, not quite with the sorts of intensity that you have in a New Japan match, but it was very much, these two people are just going at it. You only have control of your opponent for about 30 seconds to a minute, because it's just they're just beating each other up until one of them can find a way to really get that opening to just finish it immediately.
I do remember a bit of the offense, but it was all Moxley's offense that I can remember, because Moxley landed a bunch of DDTs in this match.
Oh yeah,
like that was basically a thing that Moxley was doing from the moment the fight started to the very end. Is just he is trying to get DDTs in to knock Brody Lee out. At one point, he does a DDT that goes through some definitely gimmicked floor, which looked very, very impressive and gave Brody Lee time to blade while inside the hole he had made. It looked great. it looked really great, although the continuous focus on the hole itself did sort of draw attention to how that floor was definitely gimmicked to fall in.
I mean, that kind of happens, and I feel that there is a certain level of value to having... You don't want to be telling people pro wrestling is fake all the time, but sometimes, particularly with a stunt like that, or a really scary looking spot, it can be very useful to have a replay or a shot which reminds you that, yeah, everyone's okay here. No one died in this sequence.
Yeah. Slightly earlier in the match, there's, just a bit where they're up on the ramp, the stairs to the ring, overlooking a table which had the championship belt laid out on it. Brody Lee tries to powerbomb Moxley into it, but Moxley reverses and throws him backwards, sending him sprawling through the table just far enough to miss bonking his head on the metal stairs. The kind of good spots that's interspersed with just the brawling here. These are just two guys fighting kind of match that it was. And then match closes out with a paradigm shift through the Frank floor. They crawl out of it one at a time. Brody Lee's, cut his forehead open in the meantime. Moxley hits the paradigm shift again. It fails to put Brody Lee down, so he just chokes him the hell out.
Yeah, there was a Gotch pile driver earlier in this match by Moxley as well, so there's these nice little touches for longtime viewers of his career to be all, hey, he learned some things from that Minoru Suzuki match, and he's going to start applying them smarter than Suzuki does. Suzuki, as a longtime villain, has a very long history of trying to choke someone out when they're nearly done and about to lose the match. He's got to hit them with his pile driver to show how good and strong he is. And here we have the opposite. Early on, Moxley weakens his opponent by hitting a pile driver, and at the end, when the guy just will not kick out, it's just, I'm just going to choke you then. I'm going to keep choking you until you're actually out and I win. And he did. And that is why Jon Moxley is the best wrestler in the world. The champion.
Yeah, it was a good display. Like, there was some bits in the match, like, towards the end, there's bits where it's showing, like, Moxley is getting worn down quite a bit. Like, there's a moment where, like, they're both winded, they're getting up in opposite corners. Brody Lee gets up and starts walking towards Moxley. Moxley gets up and then falls down. Like, oh man, he's so tired, this has been a big match. But, like, they made a point of mentioning earlier, like, oh, the fight's not over till you can see, like, the light die in the other guy's eyes or something like that. And, like, they close up to Jon Moxley's eyes and it's, like, clear and it's like, oh yeah, he's not done yet.
And lo and behold, that paid off in the end. So, our final match, there was a toy commercial in between this and the final match, but...
Those are some pretty good-looking action figures, not gonna lie. If ever I were to buy a wrestling action figure, probably be those.
Yep, there's some toys. So, the Elite, Kenny Omega, Nick Jackson, Matt Jackson, Hangman Adam Page, and Broken Matt Hardy versus the Inner Circle, Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz in a Stadium Stampede match. So, as a bit of background here, there was a plan for these two leading factions to have a double cage match, formerly called War Games, back in Jim Crockett Promotions, now called Blood and Guts, as a nod to a disparaging comment Vince McMahon made at an investors conference. But that was going to happen like a couple of weeks into when COVID lockdown began. And it's very clear from this match that they're of the opinion that going really hard on super violent, blood flying everywhere style matches is probably not what people want to see right now. Which I think you can make some counter arguments with that crazy UFC match with all the teeth getting knocked out the other week, but it was like, this was going, rather than for a pure violence thing, we're just going to do the weirdest, most creative, most absurd wrestling nonsense we can think of in this entire football field that we have booked out.
Yeah, we've booked out an entire football, not just the field, but the stadium.
Yeah.
Like, they use the stands, the VIP area, the bar. They use every section. It feels like every section they could possibly have used to full effect in this. And honestly, the only thing that I feel wasn't used to full effect in this match was the ring they set up in the center.
That's just so there's the starting point, really.
They didn't start in the ring either.
But it was in between where they both started. Because they started with lineups.
They never went into the ring.
They went in the ring.
It starts, funnily
Yep.
enough, like Hangman Page is absent for the Elite faction. Will come on a running trend. But the match starts with it's a big ad. Two teams running towards each other, screaming. One man, I think Kenny Omega throws a bin at one of them. They're clashing in the middle. It's the kind
Sammy opens the offense with just this beautiful flying drop kick that's right at the top center of the screen, barely visible.
It's beautiful. It sends into the kind of brawl you expect this kind of match to be. We were worried for a sec that it was going to be a kind of, you don't know what's going on. Yeah, everyone's kind of everywhere. But soon enough, they kind of just split into groups for...
They all grabbed a partner and took a different part of the building to be in.
Well, I mean, what led to them grabbing a partner and going to a different part of the building is when Adam Page showed up on a horse, just riding it through the middle of the football field directly towards the inner circle, making Sammy Guevara reprise the wonderful golf cart scene where he's just, oh fuck, and then just runs directly away.
So a couple of weeks ago, there was a match where Kenny and Matt Hardy against Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, which did feature driving a golf cart. And Sammy Guevara, seeing the golf cart coming towards him, decided to run away by running forward and continuing to run forward until it hit him. Now coming face, and of course, like the bump that he takes for that golf cart is a thing of art, true beauty. And they replayed it multiple times on this show as it was building up to this point. So here comes Adam Page on a horse barreling towards the inner circle. So what does Sammy Guevara do?
Runs away from the horse in a straight line.
He has learned nothing since his past mistake.
He is a proud graduate of the Prometheus School of running away from things. Ha ha, funny joke.
Yeah, though his body took over and his instincts are poor. And so as this causes a big breakup, everyone moving to different sections where we get many, many different bizarre, wacky brawls.
Santana and Ortiz partner up against Kenny Omega and Broken Matt Hardy, going up through the stands for a while until they hit the VIP area.
With a swimming pool, because the US loves its excess.
Yeah, slightly before that, Kenny's got the upper hand for a bit until they throw confection stand salt in Kenny's eyes, and then two-man power bomb him through a barricade, a table, and there was something... No, it was just barricade and a table.
Yep.
Broken Matt Hardy comes out and starts trying to 2v1 them. They get the upper hand. They throw him into the pool. Ortiz is hesitant to get into the 3 feet of water because he can't swim.
It is worth mentioning there is an important rule about professional wrestling and swimming pools, which is if you are near one, you must fall in it. Someone must go in that pool. And boy, did they go in that pool.
So they've got Matt Hardy in there, both together. They start, faux drowning him. And then it very promptly reminds you that this is a recorder segment, and they can pull hijinks like they've got Matt Hardy under the water, that he comes back up with original Matt Hardy gear on.
Yes, 1997 Team Extreme Matt Hardy of the Hardy Boys.
Well, screw it. They grab him, they put him under. Fun facts about Matt Hardy and NFL style pops up on screen. Fun fact, Matt Hardy can hold his breath for 384 seconds. And it's got prominent styles of Matt Hardy down the bottom.
Yeah, so this is also a nod to Matt Hardy 2.0, when in somewhere around 2004-ish, I think, Matt Hardy was being written to be a singles guy, and he came up with this idea of Matt Hardy 2.0, the Matt Hardy of the future, where his video package would display every time he wrestled all new Matt facts, exciting facts like Matt Hardy is much cooler than his brother Jeff. Matt Hardy always earned more Halloween candy than his brother Jeff.
So they've got him under there again, and the camera shows from the other side of the glass Matt Hardy smiling like he's having the time of his life and doing the Hardy Boys signs at the camera. They let go again. Oh, clearly we've got him this time. He pops back up in a different set again. Same deal. They hold him under. He's having the time of his life. It's just fun for Matt Hardy. They walk away with him, in the I fucking drowned position in the water. And then he pops back up now as broken Matt Hardy again. He's gone full circle.
He has completed the circle that the inner circle would... Circle. I've lost my track.
Yeah,
So yeah, his comeback includes, to thwart them both, is he shoves Santana into a chair of wheels, as the eccentric Matt Hardy says. Starts giving a prescription as a doctor,
you must
apparently.
stay in this chair of wheels. It was this doctor was to keep you in this chair of wheels. To stay there and call me in the morning.
And yeah, tapes him up with a bunch of duct tape he finds. Then finally trapping Ortiz inside a freezer, much like he was trapped in during that previous match with Chris Jericho.
Yeah, and jarring the handle sock with a
Yes.
conveniently placed broom.
Unfortunately, there is no resonant being inside the vessel of Ortiz, and so he is stuck in there. As far as we know, he is still stuck in there.
None of the other Inner Circle members saw him get shut in there, unless the refs let him out. Cut to
Hangman Page.
Hangman Page is lost. He has failed to find.
Yes, this is a callback to Being the Elite, where for several weeks Hangman Page decided to go camping in the woods to be safe, to be fully COVID safe, and he got lost there for quite a while. And it turns out he has learned nothing about directions since then, and got lost in a football stadium until he found the bar.
Sammy has thoroughly escaped and returned to the action. He's lost. He gets off his horse. He says, "Oh, there's a bar nearby. Well, I guess I'm gonna go there." Chris Hager, meanwhile, has left the action. Jake Hager, sorry.
Jake Hager, yes.
But in the rest of the action, Sammy Guevara and one of the Young Bucks are fighting. The Young Bucks starts Northern Lights suplexing him back to back. They start at one end of the field. They cut away. Chris Jericho and the other Young Buck are fighting. The Young Buck puts Chris Jericho's head in front of the heat fan. Like, my head! They start using anything. The Young Buck starts pitching footballs at him as hard as they can. He gets hit in the nuts with a football. It cuts back. The other Young Buck is just still going, suplexing him.
Yes.
He's made it to the 50-yard line, and he's still going.
That's for reference. It is Matt Jackson who does the rolling Northern Light suplexes, and Nick Jackson who was fighting Chris Jericho.
Nick Jackson offense against Chris Jericho continues. Chris Jericho briefly gets the upper hand and shoves him into the inflatable Jaguar head, whereupon the Jaguar mascot shows up and takes objection to his image being used in this way, so Chris Jericho just hits the Judas effect on him immediately.
Yeah, as far as I know, we just witnessed a murder. I did not see the Jacksonville Jaguar get back up from that hit.
So we've had 2 murders so far.
Cuts back, and the Northern Light suplex is still going. He's made it all the way to the end zone. Touchdown! He starts doing a touchdown dance. It's a bit much. One of the referees gives him a yellow card and says that the Inner Circle now has a 15-yard
penalty.
So he just super kicks the ref.
Meanwhile, back at the bar, Jake Hager has found that Hangman Page is there and joins him at the bar for a drink. They both take a sip of their whiskey, and then, well, time to get going, isn't it? And off they go for a bar brawl. They brawl here, they brawl there. They get thrown across pool tables. They crack each other with pool sticks. Jake Hager gets the upper hand, ramming poor Hangman Page across the bar for a slide like every good Western, until Hangman Page's tag team partner, Kenny Omega, finds his way over here and helps his friend. They successfully crack 5 bottles on Jake Hager. So when you purchase sugar glass bottles, they tend to generally come in batches of like 12, at least. And quite often, since of course it's sugar glass, by the time they've delivered to you, a few of them will have shattered. But the thing is, you're going to have a big bunch of them. So if you're going to do a spot involving shoving a bottle in someone's face, you might as well do it with all the bottles you have on hand.
Smash, 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 smash. It goes for quite a while, actually.
And then
I believe they bury him in the pool table. No, wait. No,
They just dump the body behind the bar.
Oh, right, yeah.
and then pour each other a drink.
And then pour each other a drink. So Kenny pours Hangman some whiskey. Hangman pours Kenny some milk.
Yeah, given that there's been, at the course of the last pay-per-view and since then, tensions between everyone and the Elite, seeing some genuine friendship and unity here was heartwarming to see.
Then we get another reprise of Sammy Guevara being chased.
He's calling...
Oh yeah, first of all, he is crawling for dear life, yes.
He's crawling for dear life after having been suplexed across an entire field. Eat your heart out, Brock Lesnar. He crawls his way for a bit, and then the sprinkler turns on underneath him, blasting him with water as he scrambles for a bit. He stands up, he notices everyone else is laid out around him. He's like, I'm the last man standing! I've won! And then he hears in the distance the rev of a golf cart. It appears in the distance, piloted by Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy. Once again, they scream, he screams, and he takes away, having learned nothing from the previous two encounters of being chased by fast objects. But this time he gets away, climbing up the barricade.
Yes, he has a new plan now. Run in a straight line upwards by climbing his way to freedom.
He climbs in his way onto a shader on part of the stands, giving himself a nice choke point advantage to kick Kenny Omega off him. He goes to kick Matt Hardy off, but he slips down as well. He starts choking out Matt Hardy on top of the shader, whereupon you see in 90s style graphics, Neo 1, revenge for Matt Hardy's lost drone. Matt Hardy has another drone which is making its approach.
What was it? The neuroelectric organism?
Neuroelectric Organism 1. This distracts Guevara enough for Kenny to come in, get some offense on him, and then standing on top of the shader, one-winged angel him all the way down to a convenient floor to break their floor, but look cool. He then pins him in there for the 3 because it was
just one pinfall to win.
Any of that would have ended it.
And the Elite stand strong, fireworks go off around the stadium, and that brings the show to a close. So yeah, like I said, very much a show about bringing joy and fun and levity. We've all the good guys, all the belts, all the champions are heroes at the moment, all good people. And I guess I should mention this as a comparison to Money in the Bank, as the last WWE pay-per-view. The main event was the Money in the Bank match, which is a ladder match where you acquire a briefcase which you can use to have a World Championship match at any time that you want. Even if the World Champions just finished a match, you can then just easily sneak in and get the win. The gimmick they did this year was they also did a pre-taped match, where they started on the first floor of their company headquarters in Connecticut, and the ladder was on top of the roof of the headquarters, and so they too did a very bizarre, wacky pre-taped thing with much brawling and much creativity and many jokes. The first thing is, this one had callbacks to previous things that have happened in AEW, but without specifically saying, hey look, here's the cameo joke, which is what WWE did because it thinks you're an idiot. John Laurinaitis appeared purely to say a catchphrase completely devoid of context. Brother Love was apparently just in a toilet. There are also a number of moments where just people have to be idiots. Like, the Inner Circle were absolutely buffoons in this match, but they weren't completely stupid besides Sammy never learning. Whereas, say, Dana Brooke in that Money in the Bank match, apparently, despite being told over and over and over again that the ladder is on the roof, that, yeah, you gotta go to the roof to get the briefcase. She sees a completely different looking briefcase in a conference room and grabs that thinking she's won. And not only does that happen, she has to be further humiliated by just her boss, Stephanie McMahon, walking in and saying, you idiot, that's not the briefcase. There are also moments where Asuka is not American, and therefore she is an animal, so she does not know what a roof is. And other such wonderful moments. There is an area with food, and there is a guy who is fat. Therefore, he must be distracted by the food and eat it, and forget about the match. They
Insert Taz gif.
They also went much more tacky than things, because they decided to go for spots like people getting thrown off the roof at the end, who then appeared the next night on Raw completely fine. So I feel that like there was some creative stuff in that match, and I don't want to disparage the creative moments of that Money in the Bank, but overall this felt much more consistent in the sort of jokes it was going for, and again, uplifting in a way. It wasn't about humiliating people because they're different. It's just there's some people who are nasty and are being thwarted in some creative, bizarre ways.
None of it's at the expense of any characteristic of the people. It's not.
Yeah. It's not fueled by hatred.
Yeah, it's not fueled by hate. It's just. It's kind of just a Looney Tunes episode, really.
It's been the case for basically every Sammy Guevara match that has been on AEW. Sammy Guevara is just Wile E. Coyote, and his downfall is either his own fault or entirely due to the fact that he's a fucking idiot. And like he's really the exception here rather than the rule, because everyone else in the inner circle like did the sensible thing. Yeah, they lost, but they were trying to win.
You know, I like the energy in this one was at a really good, consistent level. It wasn't serious. It wasn't like abundantly serious, but it wasn't too silly either. It felt like a real match. It felt like a funny real match.
Yeah, it was people using the stuff they could find nearby to get an advantage.
Yeah. You could kind of see some of it coming from like a bit, and it was in a good way too. Like you'd see something in the background, like, oh, that's gonna factor in. You see the inflatable Jagger head. I feel like someone's going into that. You see, you see the icebox in the background as they start brawling. Oh, sooner or later, someone's getting at the very least thrown into that, etc.
And it paid off. You were rewarded for paying attention.
There is one thing that we didn't mention, which is after Chris Jericho gets laid out by Nick Jackson, Hangman comes out again with the line drawer for the football field and just paints over Chris Jericho.
Mm-hmm. That final
putting
humiliation.
This great big line across the middle of Chris Jericho. And I'm really hoping on Dynamite next week Chris Jericho just shows up with the line still on his face. It would make no sense, but it would be great.
It'll make perfect sense because he is a buffoon who has been humiliated. And yeah, I love that. I love maintaining that sort of continuity in an absurd way. Much like any sort of injury happen where you then, again, like Kip Sabian coming on this show, which makes me hopeful that we will see Chris Jericho with the line still painted on him. Because like when Kip Sabian came back out tonight, just with completely covered in tape with the crutches, incapable of even really helping his girlfriend cheat now because he just cannot move. Yeah, I'm hopeful for the show, for the future. So yeah, this was definitely, I think, the sort of show that you should be having. Normally there's 3 months between shows, but the next one is 4 months away, September 5th. Which absolutely seems like the right call to be making. Just delay it as much as you can to hope that maybe you can have some sort of audience at the show. And in the meantime, hey, we've had this big, happy, high note point, so now we can just build some longer-term storyline on TV. I think this is a pretty dang good show. Good money spent.
Yeah, no, the whole show had exactly the kind of energy you want for this time period, and it was just a fun time, like all the way through. There was not really a point that I was disappointed with, and like the high point for me, the end of the show, like final match, is exactly the kind of goofy but competent, like extremely competent, brilliant, fun time that you want to indulge yourself in at this kind of point in time.
So yeah, any other thoughts on the experience today, or can we wrap this up?
Really, I do agree that this is the time period to have the faces, like, the heroes